Do you think Idaho's winters are just a frozen wasteland waiting to numb your senses? In today's video, we're going to debunk 5 myths and show you the sparkling reality that is Idaho winters. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. My name is Craig Flood and I am a real estate agent here in Idaho. And if you're curious to know what it's like to live in Idaho, whether it's northern or southern or eastern, and specifically like what are the winters like, then be sure to subscribe to this channel because I cover all that and more. So in today's video, we're going to be debunking 5 myths that I consistently hear from people just like you when they call me and they're planning their relocation here to Idaho. Just this week, I was talking to somebody who had never seen snow in her life, and she's just wondering about it. I also talked to a couple who had a pretty broad search. They're really looking at a large section of Idaho, north and south, and also considering Montana. And then all of a sudden, a house popped up that they really liked in Idaho Falls. And so quickly they were trying to figure out, can we handle the winters in Idaho Falls? So buckle up. We're going to talk about snow. We're going to talk about the harshness of it all. We're going to talk about whether or not you're going to be kind of locked inside of your house for months upon months. And we're going to talk about if you're going to have to trade in your electric Prius for a Ford F-350. I'm just kidding. If you're watching this video, you probably already have a Ford F-350 and you're going to love it up here. So let's get into it. Myth number 1, Idaho is buried in snow all winter long. That is kind of true, depending on where you go in Idaho. And that's what I just have to tell people. Idaho is so different. I mean, you have part of Idaho bordering Montana and Wyoming, and you're like, yeah, the winters are pretty severe over there. Then we have northern Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, right? It's like bordering Canada. So I would say that could be true, but it would be a myth if you're talking about Boise, Idaho, and the Treasure Valley. When people reach out to me, and maybe this is you, they don't fully know where they want to live yet, but they're just like, man, I think we want Idaho. And then I kind of help drill down on places that they should be considering. And one comment I'll get is, hey, we don't love harsh winters. And I say, great, you just narrowed yourself down. You're pretty much at that point, if you don't want to deal with a super harsh winter and you don't want to shovel snow every single day, then you're talking about the Treasure Valley. So really, I would say you're talking about Boise, but when most people think about Boise, it's not just Boise, it's all the towns next to it. So like Eagle, Meridian, Kuna, Caldwell, Nampa, all those places. So you're thinking about that area. And or you're also maybe going to be considering Lewiston, if you don't mind the smell of the paper factory. So those are your 2 options. But if somebody says, no, I don't really care about the winter, I have some other priorities, then a lot more things open up to you. But speaking of the snow and Idaho being covered in it all winter long, in some areas it does, I was just in Moscow, Idaho, lovely city. If you haven't seen it, be sure to check out my video that I did on it. But I just happened to be there like 2 weeks ago, and I was there for the first snow. And it's funny because I just posted a what is fall like in Boise, Idaho, if you're curious about that too. And in that video, I literally start the video out and I'm on a river and I'm fishing and me and my kids are playing around. And then you fast forward a couple weeks and I've been up in Moscow and I'm wearing a down jacket and it's like a snowstorm. In fact, I'll put a photo right here because I was trying to FaceTime my wife because I wanted to show my kids the snow because we hadn't gotten that yet down here in southern Idaho. But it is really, really nice. And we'll talk about the pros of snow here in a little bit, especially if you don't like snow. Just hear me out. There are a few things that you might come to like about it. Myth number 2, the cold in Idaho is unbearable and too harsh. Does it get cold? Yes. Is it the coldest place that you could live? No. Is it the warmest place you're going to live? Absolutely not. But it's not that bad in comparison to some other places, even some other places that you may be considering. So I personally lived in Montana for a while. So I've lived in Washington, Oregon, I live in Idaho, and I lived in Montana. And I remember living in Montana through the winter, and it was so cold. And I remember going outside in Montana and thinking, this can't be good for my lungs. I have not thought that in Idaho. So I would say this, when you're thinking about Idaho, just know that yes, it's going to be a little cold, but it's not as bad as some of the neighboring states. So I know a lot of people, when I talk to them, if they aren't dead set on something in Idaho, they might be considering Montana and Wyoming. And just know that if those winters scare you, Idaho could be a good option for you. It could be like a good in-between. Also, I'll say this is kind of like pro tip for you. Find a home that you are going to feel is homey right in the wintertime. Like for me personally, I bought a mid-century home, which naturally, if designed well, already has that cozy factor, but we also have a wood-burning fireplace in it. I had a fireplace as a kid, and I loved starting the fire with my dad and just doing it. I mean, fire is mesmerizing, but it's really lovely to come home to that and do a fire. So whether it's a wood-burning stove or an insert, just know that you might want to think through like, hey, what would it be like to spend winter here? And how can we make it a really warm and welcoming place? So when you're thinking about what house you want to buy, just know that winter's an aspect and it's going to force you into your house a bit more. It's not, this is not sunny San Diego. I'm not going surfing tomorrow. I'm officially in down jackets, pants, and boots for the season. So something to think about. Myth number 3, you will be stuck indoors for months on end. That's a myth. Now, if you want to make that a fact and not a myth, you can. I wouldn't recommend you do it, but you might have this thought that, man, if I move there, winter comes, you're just going to like hunker down and it's going to be miserable from November to February. And that's possible. And that could be you. And you shouldn't move here if that's going to be you, unless you're fine with that, unless you're fine just living indoors. But we're going to call that a myth. And here's why. When you move here, you're going to make new friends. That's a good assumption, unless you bring all your friends with you. If you do bring all your friends with you, let me know. Give them my number. I'd love to help them. And that's actually a great segue. I'm going to pause for a second. If you are thinking about moving here and you want to talk, here's my phone number. Here's my email. Call, text, or email days, nights, or weekends. If you don't care about that and you're not ready for that, let's get back to the video. And those friends possibly are going to be local Idahoans. Don't just hang out with other Californians. If you're moving here from California, make some friends with some Idahoans. Let them know you're not that bad and that you don't want to destroy their state, please. But you're going to make friends and they're going to have outdoor activities. You might find out that you really like cross-country skiing or snowshoeing. And all of a sudden now in the wintertime, you're like getting out. And yes, it's cold, but you're exercising and you're sweating and you're heating up and you're enjoying sights that maybe you've never seen before. It is not the warm weather that you may have come from, but it is super special in and of itself. So just know you don't have to stay locked in your house for the entire winter. There are options for you to get out and do things. That could be snowmobiling. That could be ice fishing. I mean, there's lots of winter activities that you could get out and do. I love taking my kids up to the mountain and teaching them skiing. I go snowboarding. You don't have to be indoor for months if you don't want to be. Myth number 4, winter makes Idaho a gloomy place to live. That's a myth. Winter makes Idaho beautiful in a completely new way. In the winter, when it snows, it's beautiful. Especially when you're like kind of getting fresh snows that are coming through, it reflects the light from the sun and bounces it up. So everything, I would say, is kind of like bright, light, and airy. The dead grass, it's kind of ugly looking, covered up in some nice snow. So there you go. It's not like dark and gloomy and depressing. It's very light, bright, and airy. And we get lots of sun. Though we can have inversions in the Treasure Valley. Go watch one of my other videos on that to learn about that. Myth number 5, you need a heavy-duty truck to navigate Idaho. If you already have a truck, you're set. We welcome you with open arms. Bring it. But you could easily get away with a front-wheel drive vehicle. I personally really love front-wheel drive vehicles in snow conditions because then you can't fishtail. If you've ever seen a truck fishtailing, when it's going down a road because there's no weight over the back tires, like trucks make me nervous in the winter. But just know that you don't have to have that. Now, I would recommend that you do get the proper tires so that you can get the best traction available to you. I always put winter tires on our vehicles. Well, my wife's vehicle, the van, I have 4-wheel drive, so that's really helpful too. But my wife's car, I'm totally fine driving that from southern Idaho to northern Idaho. As long as I got winter tires on it, I don't mind. So just know you don't have to get a big truck and put a Trump flag in the back of it. I'm okay if you put an American flag in the back of it. If you don't want to put an American flag in the back of your truck, I've just heard stories about that in other states where, maybe it was California, where people don't feel safe putting American flags up. That's not good. If you're curious about a good book on that whole American flag thing, go get the book called War on the West by Douglas Murray. You might really enjoy that if that comment interests you. But just know you don't need that four-wheel drive vehicle. You can get by just fine. I promise you'll be okay. Just go to Les Schwab and grab some snow tires. And you don't even have to get the studded ones. I don't run the studded ones. I honestly hate the noise of them. It's just like tack, 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 tack as you're driving. So I would just say get the studless winter tires. I've had great success with them. And if you're curious, well, how do I learn how to drive in the snow? Just come up here, find a really big empty parking lot and go at it. Just have a good time. Literally try to lose control so that you can see what it's like to attempt to regain control. And after a few times of doing that, you'll have a really good feel for what to do, and it will hopefully become muscle memory for you so that if anything ever does happen, you can just recover. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. Did I miss anything? Did I obliterate some of your myths? Are you curious about moving here? I know some of you have some questions about it, and feel free, reach out to me. I'm your resource, I'm your guide. I would love to help you make a transition to Idaho. Here's my contact information. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.